Okay, now that we know how to bring in highways and roads and so on, we can start trying to bring in buildings to start building up the site model a bit more. First, I'm just going to do a bit of cleanup. I'm just going to group these. I'll call this one all highways. Pull that up. Group this. I'll call it footpaths. Just move them out of the way a little bit. So what we can do, go back to ELK, bring in the OSM data, and just connect the file path and OSM point data. And so right click on this feature type that by default is set to building. I'll go to perspective view here just so we can see the buildings better. And again, all the buildings are in points. However, a really useful feature sometimes of using the OSM is if you right click on this with the feature type as building selected, you can click create 3D buildings. Um, and so how this works is essentially the people who drew in the buildings in OpenStreetMap if they have set the building, if they have, when they have drawn the buildings, if they have set them to heights, they would be extruded. However, as we can see here, majority of these buildings haven't been given any height data. We can see that these ones have, however, the rest haven't. Which is why, again, I really recommend everyone go into OpenStreetMap and try to build up the data as much as possible, so that these data sets are really a lot more useful. But yeah, obviously we do not want our buildings just to be flat surfaces. What we could do, we could bake this in and then just extrude them up in Rhino. However, we can also do this in Grasshopper quickly. I'll just turn off the create 3D buildings. So we're left with the points again. And bring in a polyline component again. Connect that. I'll hide this. And since we want to make them surfaces and extrude them, we just want to ensure they're closed. So bring in a boolean toggle, make that true, and now all these polylines are closed. From here, we can bring in a boundary surface, and now we're using the polylines, and we now have built the surfaces of all these buildings. So now obviously we want to give them some height. What we can do is extrude them. So our surfaces will be the base of the extrusion, and then we want to build them up, obviously. So for the direction, we want to bring in a unit Z, and this will extrude them in the Z direction. Now, the default is 1, so they've been extruded up by 1 unit, and since our Rhino model is in meters, they've been extruded up by 1 meter. Let's say we want these buildings to be 8 meters tall. So we'll bring in a number slider with 8, connect that, give it a second, and there we have it. Now all our buildings are 8 meters tall. And then you can adjust the slider, pull it down, and they're shorter. But we'll bring this back up to 8 for now. Great. Now we have the extruded buildings. You could bake them in if you wanted to and manually set these heights, but just for a standard site model, this should be okay for now. Let's group this, and we'll just call this all buildings. And I'll actually copy this group across. And I'll hide this for now. So turn this preview off. And similar to what we did with the highways, we can actually, I'll copy that as well, sorry. Ungroup and group all of this together. Similar to the highways, we can right click on the OSM data component. So we'll keep the feature type as building, but we'll select some sub features. So let's say here we want to just have the apartments in. Let's see, apartments, grab a bungalow as well. See what we have. Maybe garages, residential. I think that's good for now. So we'll click OK, and then we'll connect this to there. And again, similar with the heights of the buildings, each building feature type has to be set in OSM in order for this plugin to truly work. So we can see that all these sub-feature types that we've just added are only these buildings. Obviously, many more of these will probably be residential spaces as well, but they just haven't been set in OpenStreetMap. But say you go into OpenStreetMap, set all those, and then export it. What we can do is we can give these a custom preview. And then color picker. Let's say we want our residential buildings to be, I don't know, yellow. And there we have it. Let's say we also want to make these taller for, so you just want to have a diagram showing off all the residential buildings. So we'll make these like 20 meters tall. And then if we turn this back on, we can see all the residential buildings compared to the rest of the buildings in our site. But for now, I'll actually just get rid of these and leave all the buildings the same height and feature type.